Hi, I'm Gerri Yoshida. I live in the Bronx in New York City. I was born in 1950 in Chicago, Illinois. My family moved around a lot when I was growing up. I started school in Richmond, Virginia, 1955. Then we moved to Alexandria, which is right outside of Washington, D.C. Then I went to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, German, Pennsylvania. 10th grade was Kingston, Pennsylvania, and I finished high school in Sewanee, Tennessee. So I had quite a bit of experience being the new kid in class. And what I remember was, a lot of teasing and bullying. I was called a Jap, a chink. I was told to go back to where you came from. Kids would do the slanty-eyed thing and Ching Chong Chinaman, and I was a bucktooth Jap, a sneaky Oriental. So I really suffered a lot of wounds from all this racial hatred and prejudice. And one of the worst times I remember was in the 5th grade. I came home from school just crying my heart out because I had fallen down and I had skinned both my knees. I'd scraped my elbows. I think I even broke my glasses trying to run away from my tormentors and bullies. And as my mother was trying to comfort me, and I'm going, Mommy, why do they hate me so much? I didn't do anything to them. And my mother said, Gerri, you just have to work hard in school, study hard, and prove that you're just as good as they are. And well, that's in fact what my father and my parents had done. Even though both my parents were born and raised and educated in California, they were natural-born American citizens. But after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed into the Executive Order 9066 that required all Americans of Japanese descent to go to these relocation centers, these internment camps in remote and God-forsaken places like Heart Mountain, Tule Lake, or Jerome, Arkansas. And this is without any trial. No charges of espionage or treason was ever proven against all these Japanese Americans. So my father got his BA from Colby College in Waterville, Maine. Then he went to Crozier Theological Seminary, and he finally got his PhD from Harvard Divinity School. And he would love to tell us the story of the first opening convocation when the dean would get up there and he would say, Gentlemen, look to your right, look to your left. In 4 years, only one of you will be here on graduation day. And sure enough, my father was the 1 out of 3 who graduated from Harvard Divinity School with his doctorate from the best, the finest academic institution in the United States, thus proving that he was just as good. He was better than these Americans that would make fun of us and say nasty things and treat us like dirt just because we were Japanese Americans. So I learned to follow in his academic footsteps. By the time I graduated from St. Mary's High School, I was salutatorian. I went to Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, and I made Dean's List every quarter, and I made Phi Beta Kappa, 3rd quarter of my junior year. And I even had a white boyfriend. He was from a good Southern WASP family, white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant family. But even though I tried so hard to fit in, I still, it didn't feel completely accepted or as good as those white kids. And I certainly was unhappy and uncomfortable with my identity as a Japanese person. So, the way I had learned to survive my childhood was by working really hard to fit in with my peer group. I was like a chameleon who I changed colors so that I could be just like everybody else. Because, the Japanese have this saying that the nail that sticks up gets pounded down. And man, I had so many beat downs physically and emotionally, psychologically. It's like, okay, I know what that means. But still, there's something inside of me that wanted to be noticed in a positive way. So right before I graduated from St. Mary's, my English teacher, the beautiful, blonde, buxom Mrs. Johansson, takes me aside. She goes, Gerri, you are so shy. When you get to college, you need to take some acting classes. And I looked at her and I was like horrified. I could think of nothing worse. I never want to be on stage and have people laughing at me because I forgot my lines, or I tripped, or I dropped my props or something. I thought she was crazy, so I just completely dismissed that foolish notion. So when I got to college, I decided I was going to be an English major to show people that, I speak and write good English. I am not an FOB, fresh off the boat. I am not an FOP, fresh off the plane, like those other Asian immigrants that speak that funny, broken English. So when I was a junior, I was taking this class called Modern Theater and Drama Criticism, taught by Kelly Morris, who was also the director of the Emory Theater. And he had gone to New York University, and he was kind of considered a hippie on campus from one of those up north someplace. So I went to talk to him one day about my term paper, and Kelly turns to me and he goes, well, Gerri, I have a role for you. And I go, oh my goodness, a role for me? I am so excited. What is it? And Kelly says, a bombing victim of Nagasaki. And I go, bombing victim? I mean, that does not sound like, that is not a glamorous, fun, or romantic role. In fact, I'm kind of insulted. So I said, isn't that typecasting? And Kelly said to me, well, Gerri, who else did you expect me to cast in a role like this? And I thought, okay, at that time, there was just 5 or 6 Asian Americans like me in the undergraduate college. So it's like, well, maybe he had a point. So a few years later, Kelly starts his own theater company in Atlanta called Kelly's Seed and Feed Theater. And he decides to do this play, A Song for All Saints. And at this point, I'm ready and eager to do this part. And so I asked my mother to mail me, I had this red kimono because this is a very low budget production with no budget for costume and props. And I had this 5-minute monologue reliving my memories of the bombing of Nagasaki. Now, I don't know if I was really, that good of an actress at that point, but I think because, I was kind of different and exotic. The 2 major newspapers, the Atlanta Journal and the Atlanta Constitution, put my picture in there. And in the review, they said nice things about me. So here's my head blowing up like a balloon. And about a year later, another theater company, the Academy Theater, asked me to play the role of the ghost of a Vietnamese girlfriend in a play called Sticks and Bones. So now my acting career is off and running, and I start taking some acting classes. And of course, for every aspiring actor, their hope and dream is to go to New York City and make it on Broadway. So January 11th, 1979, I moved to New York City. And actually, the best part about that was that was the first time I started to meet other Asian American actors, and we would talk about our experiences growing up. And I just felt so relieved that there were other people who had very similar experiences like I did. And I started to find a community of other Asian Americans so that I didn't feel so lonely and isolated. And at Pan Asian Repertory Theater, I met my husband, Peter Yoshida, and we got married in 1982. And it turned out that his parents lived in Chicago, and they knew my grandparents from the Japanese church, and so we had so much in common. And in 1985, our son Kentaro was born, and we started going to the Japanese American United Church because I wanted my children to have an experience of community with other Japanese people so that they would have a better self-image. They wouldn't feel so lonely and isolated like I did. Because when I was growing up, the only other Asians I ever saw were within the four walls of our home. So, well, anyway, at this church, after a few years, I'm teaching Sunday school, and by 2001, I'm serving on the board of directors. And, when there was the bombing of the World Trade Center on 9/11, there were a lot of newscasters who said, "This is the worst attack on American soil since Pearl Harbor." And that was like a knife in my heart. I mean, it just gave me anxiety attacks. It was like triggered off all these bad childhood memories. And sure enough, my daughter Hatsumi, who was about 10 years old at that time, at the playground in our Bronx neighborhood, the kids started teasing her, telling her to go back where you came from. And as a mother, my heart is grieved. I'm distressed and upset that, the very same anti-racism that I had to deal with as a child, my children are being faced with the same thing here in New York City. So at that time, Reverend Nathan Brownell was minister at our church, and he arranged for a work team from First Reformed Church in Orange City, Iowa, to come to our church. Now, I wasn't quite sure what a work team was or what they did, but I was curious, so I baked some oatmeal cookies, and I went down to the church to find out, who are these people? And so I walk into the sanctuary, and oh my goodness, I am just absolutely flabbergasted. I see these white Midwestern farmer type people. They're on their hands and knees. They're scrubbing the sanctuary floor. Then up on the fourth floor, they're up on ladders. They're painting the Sunday school room. They're painting the pastor's office. And then some of them are even up on the roof fixing the holes that leak whenever it rained or snowed. And, I am deeply touched and moved by the kindness, the compassion, the generosity of these people who, paid for their way to come all the way to New York City and took time off from work and school, just to help us. And that these people wanted to be our friends and neighbors. It was just such a heartwarming and healing experience for me. So this work team of about 24 people came 2 years in a row. And after the second visit, they said, we want to invite some of you to come visit us in Orange City. And I was fortunate enough to be one of the people who went down there. They even paid for our airfare, that we stayed at their homes. And of course, on Sunday, we went to church with them. And Reverend Steve Vandermolen was their senior pastor, and he asked that we thank the congregation publicly for sending work teams to our church. So I was chosen as a spokesperson because most of the members of our church are from Japan, and English is a second language. And they said, "Come on, Gerri, you speak such good English." They're also very shy. So it's like, oh, okay, I'll do it. And well, Reverend Vandermolen, he's like 6 feet 6 inches tall, and I'm like 5 even, so he's bending over me with the microphone. And I am so nervous because, this is like a mega church. It seats like 500-600 people, and in our little mono-racial ethnic church, maybe we get 60-70 people on a good Sunday. So I'm really nervous, but I grab the microphone and my hand is shaking, my papers are rattling, I can barely read it. But, thank goodness for all that acting training, show must go on. So I share with the church members how during World War II, my family was a victim of mass incarceration, and how I experienced, very negative experiences as a child growing up, and but how deeply touched and moved all of us were, by the kindness and generosity of these people giving of themselves to help us and to reach out to us. And after the service, Reverend Steve invites our church members to stand with him in a receiving line, like at a wedding reception. And, we're greeting all the church members. And this older gentleman comes up to me. And as he grasps my hand, he looks me in the eye and he says, "I am so, so sorry for what happened to your family during World War II. I was a soldier then." And in that moment, I had this vision. I could see him as a young man of 18 or 20. Maybe he's never been out of the state of Iowa at that point, but he has felt this call to patriotic duty. And, his mom and his sister, they're crying. But his dad stoically shakes his hand, "Son, make us proud." And his mom going, "Oh, just come home safe." And in that moment, I could just, I could see things from his point of view. And I could see, war is hell. War, hurts everybody, in deep and profound ways. And even more than that, what I felt was, I felt convicted of, senselessly hating and resenting, all white people because of what happened to me. I mean, yes, I was a victim. My whole family were victims of racial hatred and racial prejudice and stereotyping. But even so, it was my responsibility to forgive the other person. And in that moment, when I did forgive and release, years of hurt and resentment, that's when I for the first time, I felt a burden lifted. I felt a freedom in my heart. I felt my heart healed and a wholeness, a peace of mind that I'd never felt before. And I really feel that that's where I experienced real healing and reconciliation, and I began to feel a real sense of hope, for the future. And I really feel that if we can set aside our personal differences and embrace each other as brothers and sisters and experience that shared love of our common humanity, that's how we are all going to heal and have a better life together. So that's my story of healing and hope and wholeness. I just want to thank each one of you for taking the time to listen. Thank you.